Hi, in this video I want to talk to you about the distribution and the distribution lockups in a typical project finance model. Hi, in this video I want to talk to you about the distribution lockups. So I started earlier a discussion about the term sheet negotiation, specifically about the project finance loan term sheet negotiation and how to apply it in a financial model. So this is a continuation of the same topic, and this time I'm going to talk to you about the distribution lockups. Okay, so I want to go back to the discussion that I had previously about the cash flow waterfall. And I'm just going to put the link down below if you want to just go and learn about the cash flow waterfall, which is one of the most important statements in a project finance deal. So in a project finance deal, as I expanded on that discussion about the cash flow waterfall, we have different priorities in terms of the payments, different payments. So when you receive your revenues, whatever your project is all about, whether it's a hydro project, when you're receiving the revenues, when you have a PPA contract, power purchase agreement, or whatever is the contract all about, you receive your revenues, your cash inflows, and then there are some priorities on how you can spend that money. And that's because you have a contract with your lenders. It's a project finance deal, so you have 70 to 80% of your project, which is funded by the loan that you got from any kind of lending institutions. And these lenders, they kind of have some requirements because they are financing 70%, 75%, 80% of the total project costs. So they are majority shareholder, right? So they want to monitor all the cash in and out of the project, okay? So they tell you exactly how you can spend. If you're the sponsor, they tell you exactly how you can spend the money. So they will establish different accounts. One account is what they call the revenue account, is where you receive the money. And then there will be different accounts. One account will be for the operating costs, one account will be for the interest, one account will be for the principal, one account will be for whatever. So all of them will be different accounts. They even have a different contract as the account agreements, okay? So you will establish different accounts, and in and out of these accounts will be monitored by the lenders. And one of these accounts is what they call the distribution account. So after you go through the cash waterfall, what will remain after you paid your OPEX, you repay for your debt service, you repay for reserve accounts, you repay for the senior loan, you repay subordinated loan, whatever remains will be distributed as shareholder loan, right? So that's the last line in the cash flow waterfall. And I have an extract here for you, and you can see this is extracted from a real term sheet, okay? So as you can see here, this says that from the scheduled project completion date, and I have a separate blog post and video about these different terms when it comes to different times, different timelines and different dates in a project finance deal. And I will just put the link down below if you're interested to know exactly what the project completion date means. So in this specific term sheet, it says that the withdrawal from the operating account shall be made from the following purpose in the following order of priority. So that's the important thing, the following order of priority. So that's the definition of a cash flow waterfall. So first, the money comes into the account that is for the revenues, and then it goes to the operating costs, then it goes for the fees, then it goes for the interest, and then for the principal, and then for the reserve accounts, maintenance reserve account, debt service reserve account, cash sweep, voluntary prepayment, and then whatever remains is due to be paid to shareholders or to investors, okay? So the question that I want to discuss here, is it okay to distribute whatever is remaining as dividends or shareholder loan, interest or principal, or are there still some criteria that you need to satisfy before you can distribute these remaining cash to your investors? And that the answer is yes, because as you know, a project finance deal is a very kind of interesting. I really find it very interesting because lenders, when they want to invest, or any investor who want to invest in a project finance deal, they have this kind of how can I say, they have this kind of confidence in the project. They know they need to evaluate that the project will be profitable, if not, they will not invest, so the only collateral that the investors, whether it's a lender or it's a shareholder in a project, has is the future cash flow. Okay, so they want to make sure that the future cash flows can pay the debt service. Okay, so they will put whatever criteria they can in order to make sure that the cash that is available will remain in the project account until the debt service is met. Okay, so in the previous blog post I discussed about the debt service reserve account, contingency accounts, and different measures. This time I want to talk to you about the what we call the dividend lockup ratios, meaning that at each payment periods, lenders will do the evaluation, they will look forward and they would look backward. So the whole aim is to make sure that the project is going as scheduled, everything is going as predicted, so there is nothing unpredicted, so they want to make sure that everything is going as scheduled and the base case remains the same. Okay, so that's why the lenders will impose some restrictions. Okay, and this will come in terms of some conditions in the loan agreements. They would say before the shareholder can distribute any dividends or any shareholder loan interest or any shareholder loan principal to their investors, they need to meet these different conditions. Okay, and these different conditions are specified in the term sheet. And here in this blog post and this video, I'm going to show you these typical terms that are reflected in the typical term sheets. Okay, so if you already have a term sheet, then you need to go and open that term sheet and look for the definition of distributions. Okay, so typically there is a definition for distribution, and under this definition for distribution, there are different conditions for the shareholders. So the lenders will dictate, and they will say to the investor, before you distribute any cash to your investor, you need to meet these requirements. Okay, and this can differ from project to project. However, the typical ones that I have seen in the project that I worked for are as follows. First of all, they're gonna impose that you cannot distribute dividends unless you have paid. First of all, the obvious one is that the project has reached the financial completion date, meaning that the project is already operational, right? The second one is that the project has already shown and shown that it is basically generating profits. And most of the time, this is like when it's paid its first principal, okay? And that is, I already discussed that in details in the discussion about the dates, and that is called the financial completion date, okay? So in a term sheet, you have this term that is called financial completion date. So the lenders will say that until you have reached the financial completion date, you cannot distribute any dividends. And what are the conditions for reaching the financial completion date? That is to, first of all, reach commercial operation date. And that is a definition of its own. And you have, most of the time they say you have paid a principal repayment, the first principal repayment. Or I have seen in cases where they have seen 12 months post commercial operation date or 6 months post commercial operation date. So that's depends from project to project, but most of the time there is a specific date, okay? So you need to consider that it's not like you can distribute dividend as soon as you have some profit. That's not the case. So you need to watch for that and distribute dividends in your financial model, and you should allow dividends when the project has met some criteria, and one of the criteria is this date. First of all, it should not be during the grace period, meaning the grace period is most of the time is defined as the time frame where you don't pay the principal and you just pay the interest on the loan. So after you have passed that stage, that's the time when you are allowed to also distribute dividends. Okay, so that's one of the terms and conditions. The second one is some ratios. Okay, so the lenders will impose some ratios. They will say in the term sheet that at each calculation date, at each distribution date, you need to first of all make sure that you met some you satisfy some ratios before you can distribute dividends. Okay, so you know that there are some quarterly, semi-annual, whatever reporting that you need to do to your lenders, and during these reportings you need to tell them historical debt service cover ratios and historical and projected debt service cover ratios and periodic debt service cover ratios, and all these you need to report that to your lenders, and you say that okay, at this date, let's say June 2023, I have met your criteria for the periodic debt service cover ratios. I did the calculation for my projected debt service cover ratio, and I've already met that as well. And the historic one, I met that as well. So at this date, I am allowed to distribute dividend because I met all the criteria when it comes to the ratios. Okay. And this is something that in the financial model, I will show you in the next section, that you also need to look for, and you need to calculate, and you need to make the checks in your financial model that these conditions are satisfied before you can make any dividend distribution to the investor. Okay, so these are the things that you need to check for in the financial model, and in the loan agreement you will see that before you can make any distribution to the investors. The other thing is that I have some blog posts and different blog posts and videos about that as well, but there are some other requirements for lenders, like the debt service reserve account or the maintenance reserve account by lender. So one of the other requirements, they call it covenants, is that you have the balance of that reserve account, debt service reserve account or the maintenance reserve account, are met before you can distribute any dividends, any shareholder loan interest, any shareholder loan principal to the investor. You need to make sure that the balance of those accounts are met. Okay, and these will be monitored by lenders. This is not something that you can just write a report. They will be monitored by lenders, and you need to make sure that there is enough money in a reserve account to kind of a provision to pay for the next 6 months, next 12 months debt service before you can pay any dividends to your shareholders. Okay, so all of these are conditions that needs to be met before you can pay any dividends to your investors, or any payments basically to your investors. Okay, now let's go into the financial model. I will show you how I use the dividend lockups in my financial models, in my typical project finance models. Okay, so as you can see, I am now in my input sheet. I separate the constant inputs from time-based input. That is because I want to allow some flexibility when it comes to scenario analysis, and I call that the one model approach. And I will put the link down below if you want to learn more about the one model approach. So I have a section in my input sheet on the financial covenants, okay? So the first set of assumptions that you see here, minimum periodic debt service cover ratios and 12 months looking forward, looking backwards, LLCRs. These are, I use them for the sculpting of the debt and making sure that the base case satisfy these requirements. However, the next ones that you can see here, periodic DSCR lockup ratios, forward looking minimum debt service, all of this that you see here in the input sheets are the conditions that I use when I want to distribute dividends in my model. So step one is to reflect the lockup ratios in your financial model under a section called the covenants, or however you want to call it. So you reflect these requirements by lenders before you distribute any dividends. And then the next step is to create some flags to make sure that you satisfy these requirements before you distribute any dividends. Okay, now I am in my calculation sheet. That's where I want to calculate these flags. So that I make sure that the debt ratios are met before I distribute any dividend. So the first condition is that the periodic debt service cover ratio is greater than 1.15. That's specific to this project. You can have 1.2 or whatever, okay? In my project, I have 1.15. So I already have a calculation. I already calculated somewhere the periodic senior debt service cover ratios. And I just need to create a flag, a simple flag, to make sure that on each model period, my debt service cover ratio is greater than 1.15, okay? And that's one of the conditions that the lenders impose. The second one is that the backward looking, okay? So I already calculated the backward looking in my model, and I just create a flag here to make sure that the backward looking debt service cover ratios, 12 months backward looking, is greater than the condition that the lenders impose. In this condition, it was 1.15. Another condition is the forward looking. So 12 months looking forward in this project, they wanted to make sure that the ratios are above 1.15. And I'm going to look forward and I'm going to make sure that this ratio is met before I can distribute any dividend. The other condition that was imposed in this project by lenders was that you need to achieve what they call the financial completion date before you can distribute the dividends. And their financial completion date was that you have already finished the construction. So as you can see, the construction was up to June 2023, and you have already paid 6 months of debt service. So going forward here, sorry, it was 12 months. So as you can see here, once I paid 12 months of, or shall I say, I passed 12 months from my commercial operation date, this time I can stop looking, I can start looking at the ratios and make sure that all of them are met, and I can distribute dividend. So that's a condition that was imposed by lenders, and in my financial model I need to basically make the check and make sure that this is satisfied before I can allow any distribution to the investor. The other condition was the debt service reserve account. I'm going to put the link down below for the comprehensive discussion about what the debt service reserve account is. However, I'm not going to go into the detail here, but I created a flag here to make sure that before I allow any distribution, I want to make sure that the debt service reserve account is fully funded, okay? So that's what I do. I say that if this condition is required by lender, I have a flag here, and this is actually the case, allow any dividends, okay? And the last step is to create an aggregate flag. So I would say that whether in December 2022, am I allowed to distribute any dividends? In this case, it's no. Why? Because the ratios, basically I don't calculate any ratios here because I am still during my grace period. So I don't distribute any dividends here because it's still during construction and still during grace period. So here, that's when I am allowed to distribute any dividends. So from this date going forward, because the base case are met, base case ratios are met, I am allowed to distribute any dividends. Okay, so that line is very important. In any financial model, project finance model, you need to create this flag. Okay, and then once you created this flag, the last step is to you have this dividends due, which is, as I told you in the beginning of the video, the last line in my cash flow waterfall is the cash flow available for distribution to investors. Okay, so are you allowed to distribute that? Then the answer is it depends on whether you have satisfied the conditions, blah, 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 that we have just discussed today. So you need to multiply, as I have done here, the dividends declared, you see. So dividends allowed, you see this is the flag, and I multiply it by this flag, and then that's the line that goes in the calculation of the shareholder return, because here you are not allowed. You see, for example, here you have 5 million. It's in the account. It's a cash that is available in the account. You have 5 millions sitting in an account, but the lenders will not allow you to distribute because that's their requirement. So you are only allowed to distribute the cash once you reach financial completion date, which is in June 2024. Okay, so if, for example, you didn't consider this in your model and you say that I pay 5 million here, you were underestimating because you didn't consider the lender's requirements here. So that's why I say that it's important that the financial modeler is involved in the negotiation and knows exactly what needs to be done under the loan agreement, what are the lender's requirements before he or she does any calculation for the ratios and for the metrics that are required by the investors or lenders. Okay, so that's it for me for today. I hope that was clear. I'm going to put the blog post as well up on my website, phoenixmode.com. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, I'll be happy to learn from you as well, to answer your questions if I may or if I can. And that's it for me, and let me know if there's a subject that you're interested in, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you and bye. If you want to learn how to build better financial models, check out my online course on financial model spreadsheet design at courses.phoenixmode.com.